The door in the face technique. If you ask for something outrageous and get rejected, then follow up with a much smaller request. The second request suddenly seems reasonable, even if it wouldn't have been accepted on its own. This is the door in the face technique, a psychological trick that makes people more likely to agree to what you really want by first presenting them with an extreme ask. At first glance, it seems counterintuitive. Why would someone reject a big request but then agree to a smaller one right after? The answer lies in the subconscious need for compromise. When someone says no to a large request, they often feel guilty or uncomfortable, especially if the person asking seems sincere. When the smaller request follows, it feels like they are meeting in the middle, restoring a sense of fairness. This technique works because of a psychological principle called reciprocal concessions. When one party appears to back down, the other person feels a subtle obligation to do the same. The second request feels more reasonable, not necessarily because it is, but because it's being compared to the first one. Salespeople, negotiators, and fundraisers use this tactic all the time. Imagine a charity worker asking you to donate $500 to a cause. You decline because it's too much. Then they say, "Okay, how about just $20? Suddenly, $20 seems much more reasonable, even though you wouldn't have considered it if they had asked for it first. Retailers use this trick as well. A store might try to sell you an expensive bundle of products. When you hesitate, they say, "Okay, how about just buying this one item?" By contrast, the single item now feels affordable, even though you may not have planned to buy anything at all. Parents unknowingly use the door-in-the-face technique on their children. A parent might ask their child to clean the entire house. The child refuses. Then the parent says, "Okay, at least clean your room." The child, feeling like they've gotten out of the bigger chore, agrees, when they might not have if that was the first request. This technique can also work in negotiations. If an employee wants a raise of $5,000, they might start by asking for $10,000. When the employer declines, the employee compromises and asks for $5,000 instead, making it seem like a reasonable middle ground. But there's a limit to how extreme the first request can be. If it's too absurd, the person might feel manipulated and refuse everything. The best way to use the door-in-the-face technique is to make the first request big but not ridiculous. If the person sees the first ask as something you could genuinely want, the second request feels like a fair adjustment rather than a trick. Understanding this technique allows you to recognize when it's being used on you. Next time someone presents you with a massive request before scaling it down, ask yourself, would I have agreed to this second request if it was the first one I heard? If not, you're likely being influenced by the door-in-the-face technique.